guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing another wedding related video for you guys since you seem to like those a lot. So if you guys don't know and you're new to my channel, basically I've been doing a wedding related video just about every month up until my wedding, and I have 5 more months to my wedding, so I have done quite a few videos leading up to now. So if you haven't seen those, I will go ahead and link below the playlist of all of the videos. I've done, I think, a bridesmaid makeup look, shopping for my wedding dress, and just random tips and tricks here and there. But today's video is going to be mainly focused on how to cut costs and still have an amazing wedding. I think there's 2 options that most brides are faced with. I think the first one is whether she wants a wedding that is going to be glamorous and amazing and she gets everything she wants. And then there's the second bride that is more about trying to save costs here and there and maybe just have a mid-sized wedding where you don't get everything you want but you're still happy. So if you're in that second category like myself, then this video is definitely going to be for you. So just to give you a little background on Doug and I's wedding, basically Doug and I are in charge of all the decorations, so the flowers, the centerpieces, and the bouquets and things like that, along with photography and then my wedding dress. So we basically paid for most of it already, the photographer and my wedding dress, which was a big chunk of everything. But we're lucky enough because our parents, both mine and his, are paying for the venue and the food and miscellaneous stuff here and there. So yeah, basically we still do have a ton of stuff to pay for along with the honeymoon. So our biggest aim was to try and cut costs as much as we possibly can. But on the other hand, I didn't want my wedding to look cheap or too DIY or something that I wasn't going to be happy with and comfortable with when I look back on in pictures. So with that being said, I have a huge list of all of the stuff that I've come up with about the personal ways that I'm choosing to cut costs at my wedding. So maybe you guys can see for yourself if it's something you're interested in doing, and yeah, let's go ahead and get into the tips. The biggest cost that is such a hurdle for most brides and myself, and just something that costs a lot of money overall at your wedding, is having a lot of flowers. Flowers are beautiful, but on the other hand, you buy fresh flowers, you have them for 4 hours or however long your wedding is, 5 or something, and then they die and you don't get to take them with you. So in my opinion, you can make your wedding still look amazing without having bouquets of flowers on every table, on every post, background of every picture. I don't really think it's necessary to make your wedding look spectacular. I do think it is important to have the traditional flowers, so the bouquets and maybe some centerpieces and the little corsages or whatever those things are called, or boutonnieres, actually boutonnieres. So I think those things are important. I feel like every bride nowadays that goes on Pinterest just gets swept away by how beautiful the floral arrangements are on that website. I swear. Every picture, there's a huge, long, beautiful over draping foliage on the tables, and there's a huge archway that probably costs $2,000 behind the bride and groom, and you start seeing all these pictures of flowers and wanting them. But at the end of the day, are they really going to make a difference in your overall wedding? What I've chosen to do is actually do the flowers myself. I don't personally have a wedding coordinator or wedding planner. We actually just get one lady on the day of the event to help us set up, and it's nothing special. So basically I'm my own wedding planner, and I think that's another way to save costs. If you know exactly what you want and you have a vision and you kind of have always known what you like and what you don't like, then I would just say do it yourself. It's a little extra work, actually a lot of extra work, but it will save you thousands in the end rather than getting a wedding planner, unless your venue kind of comes with a wedding planner. So yeah, anyways, flowers is a huge thing. I've already asked for several quotes for florists in the area that we're getting married, and for what I want, which isn't a lot, it's been near $2,000. And in my head, I'm just like, that is just not, that's too much, honestly. So I started to do some research on where I can get bulk flowers. Can I do this myself? I'm not a florist. I want to make sure my flowers aren't going to arrive dead or wilted or whatever. So I started looking online, and actually Doug found, if your guys' boyfriends know about Reddit, then you'll know what I'm talking about. But there's this website called Reddit, and it's basically a bunch of forums and stuff that people talk to each other and kind of about any topic basically. And there was a wedding related forum, and Doug found it, oddly enough, because I asked him, you know, to look this up. And it was basically a wedding coordinator secret weapon. And one of those things was buying bulk flowers from Costco. Now I know you're probably thinking that's really sketchy. What if the flowers don't come, or what if they're wilted? But I have looked at tons and tons of online reviews for Costco flowers if you're living in the US. I think it's only in the US, but basically people love them, and I've yet to see a negative review. I think one person might have said that out of 100 roses, 2 were wilted, which is crazy. So basically what I have to say about that is their prices are amazing. They have all kinds of flowers, they have all kinds of greenery and foliage and baby's breath and whatever you could think of. They actually already do bouquets and boutonnieres. They do centerpieces for you, and it is so cheap. I think 100 roses, long stem roses, are $75, which in my opinion is really, really cheap. Not only do they have roses, but they have so much other stuff, peonies and whatever's in season basically. And yeah, that's a really good site. Also, you can buy some from Costco, some from Sam's Club, and then there's another site that I'm planning on getting my flowers from, and that's 50flowers.com. I've looked at so many things on Pinterest and just online about 50 flowers, and the flowers are impeccable. They have unique flowers, so they don't just have roses and sunflowers and kind of the same stuff. They have ranunculums, or whatever that's called. They have peonies and just any kind of flower you can think of, orchids and lilies, and basically whatever's in season during your wedding, which is what you would be getting at a florist anyways, and then you just do them yourself. So there's step-by-step guides online about how to put together flower arrangements. And honestly, what I want is pretty simple. I want most of my wedding to be white, so I'm really just focusing on peonies, hydrangeas, and white roses. So I think just for that, it would be really cheap to do it myself. If you did want something super intricate, I still think you can do it yourself, because there's so many step-by-step just guides on Pinterest and online about how people put together their wedding flowers from 50 Flowers in Costco, and that is a huge tip, I swear. If you want to save thousands, I would suggest do your flowers yourself. Also, my bridesmaids and I have already kind of agreed and talked about it, and we agreed that basically we'd be doing our own bouquets, and then we'd be making the groomsmen their own boutonnieres. Seriously, boutonnieres are so silly to pay someone to make because they're so easy. Usually it's just a rose, some baby's breath, and then some, you know, twine or something that you'd get from Michael's, and maybe a few pins in there. So yeah, that is super simple if you want to save money on that. Also, bouquets may look really daunting, but I've seen them made at a florist, and they are the easiest thing ever. I don't know why people pay for bouquets. I think the reason people go to florists is because florists have those special flowers that you really can't get at the grocery store, but when you go online at 50 Flowers, they have every kind of flower you can think of, and yeah, that's my #1 tip. So the second tip that I have for cutting costs at your wedding is really thinking about the venue, because I think obviously the venue is probably, I would say, the #1 cost for most brides. I talked to some of my friends and just some people that have already gotten married, and for a lot of wineries and barn type rustic house things that people get married, or just restaurants or hotels, the minimum is, you know, 7 to 10 grand just for the venue, and I think that's ridiculous. That's a car, so I couldn't fathom paying that, and I never wanted to do that in the first place. What my mom and I actually did, which is something that people don't always think about, but yet again, this was a tip found on Reddit, is go online to Airbnb, and I'm sure most of you guys know what Airbnb is, but basically it's just an online website where you can rent people's homes, huge houses, apartments, condos, beach bungalows, tree houses. You can rent anything around the globe, and it is super cheap, way cheaper than hotels. Doug and I Airbnb'd last year in New York, and we paid, I think, $120 for a New York apartment to ourselves a night. So yeah, it's so cheap. But yeah, basically Doug and I found our current venue, the one that we ended up choosing. It is a private residence on a private vineyard, and normally it was $5,000 for, I think it was 80 people. I did talk to the owner, and since I had less than 80 people, she gave it to me for $2,000, which is amazing, and you get it for 2 nights and you can actually stay there. So yeah, I would really recommend Airbnb because it is so much cheaper, and the houses that you can rent on Airbnb are spectacular homes. I looked all along the coast of California all the way up to Napa, I think, and there were homes on cliffs. There were ocean view homes just for around $2,000, which may seem like a lot to purchase if you just wanted to stay there for 1 night. I think you'd have to be pretty wealthy for $2,000, but if you're using it for a venue, then that is a really good deal. So the third tip is something that is, I guess now we're getting down to the nitty gritty. This is kind of up to personal preference, but it is saving money on your wedding cake. Wedding cakes are ridiculous, first off. I don't even like cake that much. Doug and I just really don't like it. So we didn't know if we wanted a cake, but we knew we wanted to do some kind of traditional like cutting ceremony of cake or cheesecake or I don't know, some kind of dessert, just to have the pictures and also to be able to freeze whatever dessert we're having to eat it a year later. I'm really weird, I wanted to do that. So basically, since Doug and I don't really like cake, I'm actually thinking about going, now this is gonna sound tacky, I know a lot of you guys that have good style like myself are gonna be like, heck no, I'm never doing that. But I have yet again seen on Pinterest and online other people doing it, and it looks so good. It looks like it came from a bakery, and that is if you go to either Costco or Bonds or Ralph's or some kind of grocery store and you ask them to make you basically really plain and simple round cakes, and you stack them, you ask them for different sizes and you ask them to stack them. Going to a grocery store or Costco is so cheap. I think you can get the cakes for around like $30 to $40, and let's be honest, I mean, unless you're a crazy foodie and you need to make sure your cake tastes amazing, I'm fine with pretty much any cake, because at the end of the night, I mean, I already know that most of my guests are going to be intoxicated, so they're really not going to care about how good the cake tastes. They're just going to be eating it right up in 5 seconds. So, I mean, I know some people are like, I have to have the best tasting cake, but really, only you're gonna notice, and most of your guests are gonna expect a normal wedding cake. So if that's a way that you guys can save potentially $500 in a wedding cake, I mean, I would take that. So I think Doug and I are either gonna go to Costco and get cheesecakes, because let's be honest, cheesecakes from Costco are way better than plain old vanilla or red velvet or whatever kind of wedding cake. And then we're gonna make maybe a dessert table or something like that. Or I'm just gonna go to Vons and ask them to make me a plain white cake and then put roses or peonies or something myself on along the cake, and it will seriously look like it came from a bakery. You'd be amazed. If you just Google, you know, DIY your own wedding cake, then you will see what I see. So the fourth tip is not having an open bar. Okay, so I've been to a few weddings in my day, and every wedding that I go to that has an open bar, I'm gonna be honest, it gets pretty out of control. I mean, I think it depends on what kind of guests you invite. Since Doug and I are pretty young still, everybody is into that drinking phase and getting hammered at your wedding. So I think you don't necessarily need to have an open bar for your, actually, I don't think you need to have an open bar for your guests to have fun. So at my wedding, we're actually gonna serve wine, beer, champagne, and then we're not gonna serve shots because I don't think that's necessary. And then in addition, we're gonna serve a his and her cocktail throughout the night. So I think that's a really cute way to personalize your bar area and not make it so over the top to where it's gonna cost you thousands to just serve people all night long. So this tip is actually dependent on how big your wedding is. If you have a couple hundred guests, I would recommend you get a DJ just to kind of corral the guests and make them do what you want to do. But if you're having a smaller, more intimate wedding like mine, I would recommend that you don't spend money on a DJ, because more oftentimes than not, the weddings or events that I go to that have DJs that don't know the bride and groom play songs that are either awkward and terrible, or he's just too over the top sometimes. He's the one with the microphone and you're hearing that one person all night long. So I'm pretty sure for our wedding, we're actually just gonna do our music ourselves. We're gonna get, Doug's mom already has a stereo system, so we're just gonna plug in our iPod and basically make sure it works, obviously. And we actually get the night before, since we did book an Airbnb, so we're gonna test everything out the night before. And make our own wedding playlist. So the next tip is wedding dresses. Yet again, wedding dresses are a huge cost depending on what you're doing. I actually already chose my dress, like you guys already kind of saw that vlog. And if you haven't, I'll go ahead and link it somewhere here. But I actually chose my dress from a sample sale, and that was risky, obviously, because you can't get it altered at the place. And I do have to lose a little bit of weight just to fit in my dress, or just to make it look nicer. I can fit into it, but I need to lose a little bit. So yeah, just definitely looking at sample sales. There are so many in Los Angeles. I don't know if it's just this area I live in, but hopefully there's a lot of sample sale, more discount designer dress places where you guys live. But if you live anywhere like I do, then there are tons of options. Also, I was looking into buying a pre-owned dress for a while, which I know girls would scream over because you don't want to wear someone else's wedding dress, it's kind of tainted. But if you don't care and you're like me, then there are so many sites that do really good pre-owned dress deals, and they actually do return some of them. If you get the dress and you don't like it, you can return it. Okay, so the next tip is something that I was kind of like mulling over. Two things actually. The first thing is having an engagement party. Doug and I chose not to have an engagement party, and I know some people would they just want all of the parties surrounding their wedding. But to be honest, I don't really like to, I mean, I know I have a YouTube channel and this is kind of hypocritical and some people would like roll their eyes at me, but I don't really like to be the center of attention. And first off, if you guys know and you watch my wedding series, you'll know that for a moment I really wanted, well, for the whole time I wanted to elope, but Doug would not let me. So yeah, I don't really like all of that attention from a bunch of different people. So if you guys find it in your budget and you really want to have an engagement party, then go for it. But we opted out because, especially since we would be the ones probably paying for the engagement party, that's just something else you have to pay for. And it's almost like a mini wedding because you have to either feed them appetizers. Obviously, there's usually alcohol at the event and it's just something you don't really need. The other thing that we opted out of is having a rehearsal dinner. Instead of having a rehearsal dinner, we're actually gonna just meet for drinks at a restaurant the night before. And it's kind of open, so anybody can come, or if they don't want to come or if they just can't make it, then they don't have to. But it's kind of a way to just make it more of a wedding weekend, kind of just having more of an intimate gathering rather than having a full-blown rehearsal dinner, because in my opinion, a rehearsal dinner, I feel like it's unnecessary unless yet again you're having a huge wedding and you absolutely need to rehearse. But for me, my wedding is more intimate. It's about 50 people, so we don't really need to walk through everything. And if we do, we can probably just practice, you know, after we have drinks the night before. So the next tip is actually getting your invitations, programs, save the dates from minted.com. That's what I did, and I swear it was so cheap. I was looking at other places online like Rifle Paper Company. I wanted my invitations from them so bad because they are gorgeous. But yet again, is that really something you need to spend your money on? I didn't want to spend $1,000 on invites because it's more about looks, to be honest. If you're doing everything yourself and you kind of want to spend more money on your honeymoon like we chose to do, I don't really see the need in getting an amazing invitation with, you know, lace paper overlays and crazy stuff like that, embossed, you know, monograms. It's not really necessary. Now, if you have the funds, go for it, girl, because I would totally do it if I had the funds, but I'm trying to save costs here, so I just went to Minted, and it's basically just a regular invitation. You just get a paper like this, and it's beautiful. You can pick from so many different designs. They also offer envelopes and address everything really nicely in the font you want, so I mean, they look amazing. I think that they're great, but they're not the most exquisite invitations ever. They're not, you know, I don't think they have any invitations on there that are trifold like menus, but it just depends on what you want, and I really like the invitations we chose, so yeah, it's to each their own. The next thing is something that we didn't actually anticipate doing. This wasn't a conscious effort. It's basically waiting more than a year to get married, and I know a lot of people would not want to do this. They want to get married right away for the most part. They want to get married usually within a year. But if you're trying to save money and if you're paying for everything yourself, obviously the longer time you have to save, the more money you're gonna have to spend on your wedding and less stress as well. I'm not even kidding. A year goes by so fast after your engagement. It almost feels like it's a few months. So we actually ended up waiting a year and a half, and it wasn't even intentional. We just ended up that way because it was coming up way too fast and we didn't know what we were gonna do for our wedding. So yeah, waiting maybe a year and a half. I think 2 years is probably a little bit too long for people. So a year and a half I think is that sweet spot, and you have more than enough time to save and plan, and you're under a lot less stress. So the next tip and the last one is using centerpieces other than flowers, which I know some people would not like this idea, but there are actually so many cute centerpieces on Pinterest that don't involve flowers. I'm thinking about doing lanterns. I know I'm gonna have pretty much white everywhere and rose gold. So I wanna do lanterns and maybe some white roses in vases. Also, another tip, if you are doing your own centerpieces and flowers, is to actually go to the Dollar Tree, dollartree.com, or I think dollarstore.com, there's a couple of them, but they have really, really cheap vases, obviously for $1, and they look like amazing. They're basically just glass vases in a pack for $1, and I think that's what I'm gonna do. The ones I'm gonna get are square, and I'm just going to maybe put them on the bar or, you know, on different tables on the guest book setup. That's a really cheap way to save on vases and things that you're not really gonna use again. You're probably not gonna use 50 vases again, but if you do have to spend $50 on vases rather than paying a florist thousands of dollars for vases and flowers and all that, I think that would be a better idea. So yeah, that's it for this video. If you guys have any tips that I did not mention or that you're doing for your wedding, please go ahead and leave them in the comments, because I have yet to plan anything as far as centerpieces or flowers yet. I kind of have an idea, but I haven't booked anything yet, so any tips or advice would be much welcomed. So if you guys like these videos, then please go ahead and give this one a thumbs up below, and make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Actually traveling places is kind of crazy. And we have to just now book our hotel in Tokyo, and we're actually going for 10 days now, whereas that's the one thing when you went through the travel agency, it was only